Yeah, thanks a lot, Samir, first of all, for inviting me here at all and for introducing me so kindly. I indeed had the chance, it's the first time for me to be in Canada. I had the chance to walk around a little bit, and I'm quite surprised why people like Samir are so obsessed with critical theory here, because there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this place. Okay, but I've only been here for a couple of hours, and I don't really the way I should perceive this place. The ideas that I will be presenting today have been on my mind for some time, and Samir has now finally given me the chance to actually work them out a little bit, but only a little bit, so it's quite provisional still. I look forward to the discussion to maybe become a bit more thorough on this. Maybe just a few words about my German accent. I'm afraid you will have to get used to this. Very happy to do it. The subject of my talk will be the theoretical relation between Marx and Freud as it appears in light of one specific term. And my approach begins with a very simple observation, namely that in both of their thoughts you can find prominent reference to the term association in connection with the attribute free. It seems as if there were no specific connection between these two uses of the term, since they can easily be traced back to two quite different lines of tradition that also can properly be distinguished. Marx uses association as it was used in the history of early socialism and in the tradition of political associationism. Freud refers to it in the way it was used in the history of British empirism and in association psychology. The term association does, however, as I will try to show, serve similar functions and has a similar structure in both of these contexts. In both cases, the term points to elementary theoretical ideas and critical impulses too. The topos of the association of free and intrinsically connected elements facilitates the critique of abstract instances of representation which hamper the articulation of the repressed but basal forces of the societal or mental order. Freud is, we all know, interested in free association as a form of expression that allows to partly circumvent repressive forms of articulation under the control of the superego. And while the regular speech conceals but is secretly driven, free association provides access to the elementary forces of subconscious desire in all its pathological reality. Marx speaks of the association of free and equal producers exactly at places where he addresses a societal order that would manage without repressive state apparatuses and the predominance of the commodity. As Marx's thesis about state and capital is that their apparent universality tends to conceal by what they are secretly driven. So the elementary structure of bourgeois class society and the logics of production. So in the following 45 minutes, so we really have time to get used to my German accent, I will shortly try to reconstruct the two histories of the concept of association with their hidden resonances, and thereafter I will outline structural similarities between the two uses of the term. In both Marx and Freud, figures of ontological grounding and the critique of repressive representation are central. Both assume that association is an intrinsic connection that on the one hand comes forward spontaneously, while on the other hand has to be guided too. And for both of them affirm these forms of association stand in some relation to the distorted whole for which they somehow are the cure. With regard to these figures of thought, I will try to develop some ideas concerning the analogous structure of the theories of Marx and Freud in general. And as I will not be able to reconstruct the relation between Marxism and psychoanalysis historically, and as I will thus replace some standards of strict historical scholarship with a rather playful comparison, my talk would be confronted with the objection of being arbitrary and a free association itself. The arbitrary, however, has in many languages, such as in the Latin, Gott liebet, as in the German, beliebig, the connotation of that which pleases. Freud's reference to beliebig in his explications of free association always has this other meaning. And in fact, I would like to argue between the lines for theoretical inquiries that would be guided by such little desires that might lead us to what we do not know already, to what we have not done yet, although we might already secretly have assumed it. So the first block of my talk will be association in the history of ideas. There are, of course, all kinds of associations. There are insurance associations, and some group organization of sports discipline calls itself an association. From the standpoint of linguistic pragmatics, there are good reasons to be skeptical when a deeper meaning is attributed to words, notwithstanding their factual context of usage. And where this happens, the dynamic of words quite easily turns into an ideology, hidden in the words themselves. Words begin to spook as apparently meaningful, while their reference has become unclear. Such ghostly terms of previous times maintain social meanings that have no justification in vital pragmatics whatsoever. And the same goes for the history of the concept of association, for association is just a word too. But in fact, this insight brings us directly to Marx. When Marx addresses the spook of the term association in the writings of Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, he argues precisely like that. Marx presents himself as a critic of language who tries to exorcise the ghostly existence of the term association. And already at his time, obviously, association had become a spooky term. It had become a catchword among political associationists, surrounded by vast amounts of connotations. Sometimes, as in the case of Proudhon, these connotations might have replaced political programs and proper arguments. So when dealing with Proudhon, Marx criticizes the indeterminate amount of connotations that comes with the term association and which conceal the vagueness of Proudhon's political argument. Proudhon tries, according to Marx, I quote, to defend competition against socialism by describing competition by the single word association, end quote. The shortcut of Proudhon consists in a reification of language, taking a term for granted and insinuating various connotations with clauses allows him to arbitrarily combine contradictory attributes. Proudhon says, as Marx criticizes, association, which suggests socialism, and then he deduces forms of competition from the term alone. Thus, he can speak about socialism, pretending to clarify its meaning, while he argues for market competition. Marx points out, a quote from the History of Philosophy, in actual fact, society, association are denominations which can be given to every society, to feudal society as well as to bourgeois society, which is association founded on competition. How then can there be socialists who, by the single word association, think they can refute competition? And how can Monsieur Proudhon himself wish to defend competition against socialism by describing competition by the single word association? End quote. Association, obviously, has become an empty word, useful for ideological mobilization, but not sharp enough to carry specific and irreducible meaning. But this is only half the story. Despite the polemics, Marx himself stands in a terminological tradition. And the history of this terminology is not to be neglected either. It was Rousseau who introduced the term association to social philosophy and made it a positively connoted term to describe the agglomeration of free and equal citizens. In the second discourse, Rousseau speaks of, I quote, free association which obliged none of its members, end quote, as a form of societal organization. And in the contrat social, in the social contract, it will be the contract itself that constitutes the association of a free society. After Rousseau, particularly Charles Fourier and Claude Saint-Simon specified egalitarian forms of organization as associations. The idea of an association of producers who would work together and market their goods in common was the central idea to Fourier's utopianism. Saint-Simon reflects on association as the form of organization of the classe productive, professional organization for scientists, artists, and workers that should, in the end, reorganize society. Since the market and the state would not adequately represent the productive classes of society, association was, for both Fourier and Saint-Simon, the model for another form of organization. Partly independently of the theoretical efforts of early socialists, associations became the central element in the working classes' self-organization. Especially in the wave of strike in the French Revolution of 1830, a movement was born that committed itself to the idea of associationism. As Bernard H. Moss writes, associations were, I quote, originally designed with expanding funds of collective capital to ensure the continual admission of new members without capital and emancipate the entire